Hey everybody, KC here. So I got an email from a morning newsbeat reader the other day that was responding to my column about the closing of Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville in Las Vegas. And my general observation that I think that brand actually needs to find ways to skew younger, not older. And the email had a reaction to that, and I wanted to share it with you and then respond to it in kind. The writer said this: I was glad to see you writing about nurturing a brand and appealing to a younger audience. I think this is advice you should consider for your own brand. It's a major turnoff to read all of the posts that you include in reference to the grocery industry in the 70s and 80s and talk about back in the day, particularly in the Your Views section. Thanks for listening, Beth. Okay, Beth, fair point. Although I was a little surprised to see that the turnoff is references to the grocery industry back in the 70s and the 80s, partly because I'm old, but I'm not that old. I started covering the industry basically in the mid-80s. So I missed the grocery industry in the 70s, although I'll grant you, people who write in Your Views, some of them have been around for a long time, and they're sharing their perspective. And I do think that historical perspective does matter. You know, listen, there are things that happened earlier in my career and a lot of people's careers in which we can all see echoes of today. You know, I do love the line from Mark Twain, who's, by the way, older than I am, that I've used here on Morning Newsbeat before, right? That history doesn't always repeat itself, but it often rhymes. In fact, I built a whole speech around that subject. And in fact, I'm going to be giving a version of it this week at Western Michigan University's Food Industry Conference. But I do take your point. And I'll try to keep it in mind going forward and try to provide a little bit of balance. Although I can't promise to forget about the last 40 years, in part because that's a significant part of the food industry's history, but it's also a significant part of my personal history. And I've always mined my personal history for both lessons and perspective. You know, to be honest, I would have been a little less surprised to see objections to some of the cultural references that I make in Morning Newsbeat. I get it when I reference Tennessee Ernie Ford or Jimmy Durante. Some people are going to roll their eyes. In fact, I imagine a lot of people roll their eyes. And to be honest, that's sort of part of my shtick. I do know that my references sometimes can skew old. Although, in my defense, I do want to point out that during 2023, I did go see both the Taylor Swift concert movie and Barbie in the theaters. And I extracted business lessons from both. I do want to offer one metaphor, if I may. You know, about 2 weeks before I launched Morning Newsbeat back in 2001, the very first iPod from Apple was introduced to the public. It rolled out. It was available. And I got that very first iPod. And I can remember thinking to myself and saying at the time that that technology was creating a platform that was going to change everything, including how retailers interface with consumers and vice versa. And to be honest, I think I've been proven to be right on that one. It was just a few weeks ago that I went to an Apple store and I tested an Apple Vision Pro. And I had exactly the same reaction to that. Listen, it's important to embrace the new, whether it's technology or other things, but I think it's also equally important to embrace the history. We can take lessons from both. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.